Well, hello. Welcome to today's information session on applying to International Affairs Graduate School. My name is Dan Birdsall. I'm here with the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University in Boston. And I'm very pleased to be joined by several of my colleagues from other top schools of international affairs, from Johns Hopkins SAIS in D.C., Columbia SIPA in New York City, and Princeton Woodrow Wilson School in Princeton, New Jersey. We're here today to give you a little bit of information about International Affairs Graduate School in general, a little bit about our individual programs, but also to walk you through some of the best practices as you're preparing your applications for these programs, because there are a lot of things that these programs have in common. And that's one of the reasons that we travel and do these sessions together, because there are certain things that you should expect to need to do for your applications for any of our schools. But by way of introduction, I think it's a good idea to just speak briefly about some of the overarching commonalities that our programs have. You will obviously have individual experiences at any one of our schools, but there are certain ways in which all of our programs share a lot of common aspects. So to start, a good resource to begin your research to international affairs master's programs worldwide is a website called AppSIA.org. That is AppSIA.org. AppSIA stands for the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs, and it is a membership organization really of, I think it's fair to say, pretty much all of the top international affairs schools throughout the world have either full membership or affiliation with AppSIA. And so if you are in the early stages of researching options for international affairs grad school, AppSIA.org is a great clearinghouse website. It will give you a sense of where in the world these programs are located, what relative academic emphases they have, if they specialize in certain subject areas, certain areas of the world, faculty members, sort of basic information about all of these programs. That's a great place to start. There are certain things that all AppSIA schools have in common. So to be an AppSIA member school, there are certain characteristics that you must have. One of the primary ones is that you have to offer a 2-year interdisciplinary international affairs master's degree. So any AppSIA school, you can be sure that they will have basically a flagship degree of the school that is an interdisciplinary international affairs degree. What interdisciplinary means in this context is that all of these programs to some degree will oblige you to study, to expose yourself to sort of all of the major subject areas of international affairs. So at any AppSIA school, you can be sure that you will be studying some international law, some international business, economics, security studies, development. Many of us have emphases in gender and migration and refugee studies, humanitarian affairs. There's many other subject areas, but all of these programs are going to have pretty extensive curriculum in all of these subject areas. And in all these programs, you are going to be studying at least to a minimum degree all of these different areas. So that's what we mean by interdisciplinary, is that you're going to, regardless of your particular specialty, you're going to be taking classes in a lot of different areas. You will find that different programs do have different relative emphases on things. Some schools specialize in certain subject areas or certain regions of the world, but all of these programs are going to offer a degree that requires you to have a minimum degree of emphasis in all of these subject areas. We are all international affairs schools, so I think it should be obvious that we also all value a demonstrated commitment to international work of some sort. Many of our students have spent significant time outside of their home country through studying abroad or working abroad or short-term business trips or growing up partially in another country. There's lots of different ways you can demonstrate international exposure, but that's very common amongst our applicants. Going along with that, I think we all will emphasize in some form the value of foreign language acquisition. So while some of us have formal academic requirements and some of us just sort of have a bit of a cultural value around foreign language acquisition, we all are going to expect some degree of international language exposure in our students. For most of our non-native English-speaking students, that comes in the form of English, which I think everybody here has pretty good English already, but you can expect, as part of the application process, to take, in most cases, a TOEFL exam to demonstrate your competency in foreign language. Another thing that is very important to be aware of about our programs is that we all place a very strong emphasis on the value of prior professional experience before coming to our programs. The average age of most of our programs is 26 or 27 years old, which means that most students come to us having worked professionally full-time for several years before matriculating at our schools. It's not a rule. I think all of us do enroll some students directly out of their undergraduate studies every year, but it's a very small number. I would say probably 10% or fewer of our students come directly out of undergrad. So most students have some professional background in any variety of sectors. Another feature of an interdisciplinary international affairs program is that students are not coming to us with the exact same set of experiences, the exact same academic interests, or the exact same professional plans moving forward. We have people that come to us from the private sector, from military, from service programs, from nonprofits, from government agencies, many different types of professional exposure. But I think you will find that the emphasis in both the classroom and sort of the larger cultures of our programs, it's very, very professionally focused. People come to grad school because they have a specific professional goal in mind. And so you will find that people in our programs are very, very focused on their future career planning. They are taking classes in order to build skill sets in areas that they feel they are lacking, to build regional areas of expertise. They're very interested in forming relationships with other students and later becoming part of the alumni networks, because those connections are extremely powerful in making professional connections moving forward. So you can expect a lot of emphasis on professional and career planning in our schools. We all also offer dedicated career services offices. And when I say dedicated, what I mean is that each of our institutions has a full-service career services department that works only with our students. So Tufts University, for example, it's a large university in Boston. It's got 7 different grad schools. It has a huge undergrad population. But the Fletcher Career Services only works with Fletcher students. It does not service the entire university. This is true of Johns Hopkins SAIS and SEPA and Woodrow Wilson and all other AppSIA schools. So our career services staff are very, very specialized in the types of careers that our students are looking to build. They work with you on a very individual basis, and they will be expecting to work with you during the entire time that you are in our programs. These are not offices that expect that they will be seeing you for the first time 1 month before graduation when you're looking for a job. They're going to be expecting to work with you from the moment you set foot on campus, to help you take advantage of all of their programming, the career trips that they offer, employer site visits that come to campus, lectures, academic planning, interview preparation and practice, all of the things that go into preparing for a career after graduation. The career services offices are going to be working with you in great detail. So in general, something really important to understand is that the value of prior professional experience and the emphasis on what you bring to the school by virtue of that professional experience is a big focus of our programs. So those are some of the major areas of commonality amongst us, and there will be opportunities to talk to us individually afterwards if you have particular questions about our own programs. We also obviously have lots of particular details on our websites that you can get into. But we're going to begin our presentation now to talk a bit more in depth about the application process. For those of you who maybe are even this year preparing an application for matriculation next fall, there's a lot of things to keep in mind during the application process, and we're going to do our best to walk you through that today.
I don't have a nice pair of hands with a belt to make that work. Hi, everyone. My name is Noemi Crespo-Rice, and I serve as Assistant Dean of Student Affairs at Johns Hopkins SAIS, located in Washington, D.C., SAIS Europe, and in Nanjing, China. So we're going to talk to you a bit today about the best practices in applying to schools and international affairs. So we're just going to go through this presentation. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about reasons to pursue a graduate degree. We're going to talk a bit about how to prepare to apply, what you need, materials for submitting a successful application. Tips to be a successful applicant and actually get into the programs. We'll talk about some financial resources. We'll talk about ROI and questions at the end. So reasons for pursuing graduate school. So I mean, these reasons could be broad for most students, but for most students, it's necessary for your desired professional field. So you may have ideas of what you want to get into, what you want to study, but knowing that you need a master's degree might be a fundamental reason as to why you're applying to graduate school. Certain fields require advanced degrees to legally practice or to be recognized professionally. Graduate school can better prepare you for positions or more opportunities in your career. New skills and the knowledge base that you would get from schools of IR, some of that which were mentioned by my colleague today, just getting the experience in economics and policy areas that will be integral to some of the jobs that you are interested in pursuing. Graduate school increases your options and professional prospects, and it serves to satisfy your intellectual curiosity and spark passion, hopefully. And I think that's what graduate school does for most people. It helps to solidify what you want to do with your life, right? So that's primarily the reasons why students pursue graduate school. So our students at the schools that are represented here today are primarily between 25 to 50% of our students are international, meaning that all of our schools, as was already mentioned, we value the presence of international students or non-American students at our campuses because we value the contribution they bring to the classroom, the contribution they bring to the field of international affairs as well. So the average age, as was mentioned earlier as well, for our entering students is around 26. Most of our students come within 2 to 4 years, with 2 to 4 years of work experience. Undergraduate preparation ranges from political science, history, IR, economics, language, literature, philosophy, engineering, mathematics. This can go on, journalism. Our students come from all sorts of different concentrations in different areas, and that honestly is what brings the diversity to the classroom experience, is having so many students that come in with years of professional experience in all different sectors. So it helps to bring the academic experience to a whole new level. Students come from a range of professional backgrounds in the public, private, nonprofit, for example, service organizations, consulting, finance, government, education, there goes journalism, and military. So our next presenter is going to talk about preparing to apply to graduate school. All right, let's try this again.
Very much.
No, I think it's fine.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. Great. I should be comfortable with this by now. Okay, so my assumption is at this point you are all convinced this is the thing for you. You are going to apply to grad school. Where do you start? Well, the first thing is actually pretty obvious. You need to figure out where do you want to apply. As I was mentioning before, there's actually a pretty significant number of international affairs schools worldwide at this point. Not too many years ago, it was a relatively small sector, but in the past 10 or 15 years, there's been a big increase in the numbers of programs worldwide. So I'm going to bring you back to what I started with. The first resource that I think is really helpful to make sense of what programs are out there and what might be a good fit for you at the general level is AppSIA.org, AppSIA.org. You're going to find at least basic information of all the schools worldwide that have this general type of degree that you might be interested in. From that point, you should start researching directly individual schools that seem like they're a good fit. And the ways that you might be drawn to a particular school, it varies from individual to individual. In some cases, you might say, well, there's a certain part of the world that I know I want to go to grad school, so I'm only going to look at schools in that area. As you learn more about schools, you might learn about certain faculty members that are at a school, or a certain school that has a really strong program in a particular subject area, or perhaps you know someone who is an alumnus of one of these programs who has great things to say. There are different reasons that you might start getting interested in an individual program, but once you have that smaller list of schools that really seem like they're most interesting to you, start researching them. As you can probably imagine, we all have very, very extensive websites, and on these sites there are curricular maps and individual course design information and write-ups about individual courses. There are student and alumni profiles. There are recorded virtual information sessions. I mean, we try to think of every bit of helpful information that we can post online to make available for you as a prospective student. So I really do encourage you to leave yourself some time to play around on our websites. There's really a lot of information available there. Once you get closer to actually applying to schools, you need to start paying close attention to what the actual requirements of the application are. There are many parts of our applications that are similar, but there are certain points in which we are all going to veer in different directions. Application deadlines is one of these areas, and it's very important to pay attention to particular application deadlines. And we don't make it that easy on you because many of us have deadlines that are very close together but are not the exact same date. So, for example, Fletcher has one of its major deadlines January 10th every year. And I believe, am I right, Sipa, do you have a January 15th? Or other schools might have a January 8th. Other schools might be in late December. So it's very, very important to start keeping track of what the different requirements for individual programs are. Creating a spreadsheet of the schools you're interested in, I think, can be a very helpful idea. In fact, many of us on our websites, we have a pre-published spreadsheet of our own application deadlines, so you can put all these together in one if that's easiest for you. But do pay attention to the individual requirements. This is also not too early to begin making your own financial plan. I think it is probably not a surprise to anyone joining us today that higher education in the United States, certainly, and many other countries worldwide, it's very, very expensive, and it requires a lot of financial planning. The good news is that there are a variety of resources available to help you make a financial plan, and we'll talk more in detail about that. There is a whole landscape of external scholarships. There are university-based fellowships that we all offer to some degree. There are loan forgiveness programs. There are educational loan programs. There are various sponsorship programs. It's important to start getting familiar with these different resources very early on. Get familiar with what these different schools cost. What the living costs are going to be depending on where the school's located. Try to get as accurate a picture as you can of what the entire out-of-pocket cost is likely to be for 2 years, including transportation and living expenses. You can find a lot of this kind of information on our websites as well. But financial planning really should take up as much of your time as actually applying to these universities. It's a really important part of things, and the earlier you get started on it, the better. The applications to our programs themselves, I think you will all find actually fairly familiar. You've all filled out university applications before, and I think you're going to notice that they're pretty similar to what we are requiring. So all of us have online applications at this point, which I think is standard in this day and age. So we will have an application form itself. We all have an application fee, which depending on under certain circumstances, there are application fee waivers available, so that's something you can investigate. We will all require a CV or a resume, official original transcripts from any institution where you studied and completed a degree. So that's something, some of these things are things you can do now. If you know you're going to be applying to grad school, go home this evening and request a couple copies of your transcript if you've graduated. You're going to need it at some point in your life anyway, so you might as well do it soon. We'll need recommendation letters. Typically, these schools will ask for 2 to 3 letters of recommendation, and we do ask that you submit one from an academic reference, so a professor, a faculty member, an academic advisor, something like that, and at least one professional reference, typically a former current supervisor or a professional mentor of some sort. We all also do require standardized tests. The GRE is most common. I know this is a point of anxiety for many students all over the world, and my best advice is to just tell you to relax, don't stress too much about the GRE. It is something that we all require, but we are also, I think, all pretty enlightened about the limitations of what a GRE score can tell us. I think we're all aware that the GRE does have some structural biases towards native English speakers, towards Americans, so we do require it, but it is not the only thing that we rely upon to assess academic ability. This is another thing that you can get going on early. You should schedule a GRE test date with plenty of advance notice to make sure you have time to prepare properly for it. In some cases, we recommend students might want to take the GRE 2 times because I think all of us will always accept the highest section score, not just by test date. So if you give yourself 2 test dates, you can always submit your highest score across those 2 test dates. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Sometimes people might want to take it twice. Don't take it more than twice, though. There are other things that are important in your application as well. We all also require essays of various types. A personal statement is certainly standard across any institution. Most of us will require some degree of supplemental essays as well. These can be very open-ended and general. Some of us will ask you to write responses to a policy question or just a very unusual question, or ask you to share something about your background, your upbringing, where you were raised in the world. There's a variety of essays, but this is information that you can find early on. You can go on our websites now, open our application accounts, and look at the requirements. You can see our essay questions right now. You can begin writing your essays as soon as you want. If you're someone who likes to put ideas on paper and work on an essay over a period of many weeks or months, it's not too early to start doing that now. Finally, many of us will offer an interview program of some sort. This will vary. Some institutions don't offer interviews. They don't require it at all. Others of us do offer interviews. They are almost always optional. And in most cases, those of us who do offer interview programs offer an option to do it on campus in the event that you're able to visit us in person, but also have an online option. So whether it's via Skype or some other online hosting platform, if you're not able to visit our schools, and we realize that's not possible for everyone, those of us who do offer interview programs will generally offer an online option as well. And I strongly recommend you take advantage of this for institutions that you're considering that do offer interviews. It is one more data point in the application that helps us learn about you. It's another point where you get to talk to us in your own words. You know, the essay is really the only other place where you can do that. And it's a great informational opportunity for you as well. You should think of this as an opportunity for you to interview us as the programs. It's not just us interviewing you. Many times interviews are conducted by current students or alumni. It's a great opportunity for you to ask questions and learn more about the cultures of these institutions as well. So, now that you are getting through the individual pieces of your application, how do you make a very good application? There's not an easy answer to this question. One of the very important answers to it, though, is to read our websites and our applications very, very carefully. One of the easiest types of mistakes to avoid is not answering a question that we ask in an essay. Accidentally referring to a different school in an application, accidentally not noticing an application requirement that we ask for. These are all things that you can very easily prevent, and it really is just a matter of reading through all our information and application requirements very thoroughly. And it's a lot of information. I understand that we put a lot of instruction into this, but you're going to find that a huge number of the questions you might have about applying to grad school are going to be answered somewhere on our website, somewhere on our applications. So it's really important that you spend time on the website, make sure you know about the deadlines, the various requirements that we have. You will find that there are differences. Some of us, for example, require evidence of prior economics coursework. Others of us just say, we don't have a requirement, we would just prefer to see it if you have it. Some of us have hard language requirements. Some of us have just sort of suggestions. As I mentioned before, our essay topics might be very different. All of these things can make a difference between an okay and a very good application. So it's important to make sure that you are really digging deep and researching the schools you're applying to. Pursuant to that, take advantage of all of the informational opportunities that we offer. We really do try to promote ourselves to you as prospective applicants in as many ways as we can. So we travel around and we hold events like this all over the world. We also hold many different types of admissions events at our universities, so if you do have the opportunity to come visit us sometime, there are opportunities to sit in on classes, to talk with faculty, to talk with current students, to sit in on information sessions. I think individually we all offer informational online information sessions that go into great detail about our individual programs, that you can learn about particular academic tracks or degree programs or the cultures of our school. Many of us have those in recorded versions posted on our websites. Again, that's something you can go home and do tonight, potentially, if you want to. If you see us, you're all here tonight. This is great. We travel around the world all the time. Come out to our events. Get in touch with us directly. We really love to hear directly from prospective students. We're happy to help you get whatever information will be most helpful to you. But we can't do that unless you let us know what it is that you need. And finally, give yourself plenty of time to work through the application and to get a sense of where am I really strong in this application and what are the relative areas of weakness? What can I make stronger in my application? Let some other people read your application over. Maybe you have a trusted family member or a friend or a colleague who would be willing to read your essays and critique them. This is a scary process. I remember myself when I went to grad school. You put a lot of time and effort and pour your heart into these essays, and then you give them to someone and they mark them all up and they say, no, they do this differently. But I promise you it will make your essays much stronger. All of this stuff requires time, so this is the reason that it's important to be giving yourself plenty of time to work through all the iterations of this stuff. And when you're identifying your weaknesses in particular, these can be great things to talk about in your essay. It is okay to structure your essay around a self-identified weakness and say, this is one of the reasons I need to come to grad school. That I don't have the quantitative skills I need. I don't have the regional expertise I need. You know, I've been working in this job for a while, and I can't get promoted any further because I'm lacking something. You can turn your weaknesses into strengths by identifying them and discussing them as part of your candidacy. But again, all of this stuff really requires you leaving yourself plenty of time to do. So I really encourage you to do that. Finally, just go through all of the stuff we've been talking about, go through it again, and then go through it a third time. Just be thorough in our application. I think I've been harping now already on leaving yourself plenty of time, and you really are going to find there's just so many benefits to getting going early on these applications. This is the time of year, if any of you are thinking about trying to attend grad school next fall, which is typically when people enroll, right now is the time that you should be working on your application to give yourself enough time to complete all of these requirements that I've just been mentioning. Scheduling test dates takes time. Recommenders, identifying them and giving them sufficient time to write their letters for you, that requires time. Just writing your essays, working on your financial plan takes time. It's really important as part of that you are researching external sources of funding, because what you will find is that other than my colleague from Princeton, who represents a university that is able to fully fund all of their students, most of these programs are going to be able to offer you partial financing in the form of scholarship. So it's really important to be thinking of what other resources are out there. There's a lot of external resources available to you, but again, it takes time to identify them. You need to be sure you understand when their deadlines are, because their deadlines are very different from university deadlines. So all of this stuff, it's very, very doable, but the earlier you get going on this, the better. So I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Grace now, who is going to get into more detail about preparing a strong application.
Sorry. All good? Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Grace Hahn. I'm with the Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, otherwise known as SIPA. So I'm going to go through some final tips on what you should be aware of during your application process. One of the most important ones is your essays and your personal statement. It's one of the factors in your application that kind of distinguishes you from the other applications that we see time and time again. You want to make sure that you answer the question. Each of our schools asks you to submit a personal statement or an essay, and there are some nuances in each of those questions. So it's very easy to say, oh, well, I'm applying to 5 schools, they have similar essay questions, and I will just copy and paste my essay from one application to the next application. What you don't realize is sometimes there are nuances in terms of the questions, and so you want to make sure that you answer the question that the school is asking. Don't just simply copy and paste. And sometimes that will also help pull out the name of the school that you're applying to. You want to make sure that you identify the right school to the right application. We read a lot of applications with the wrong school, and sometimes that doesn't really go very well. You want to make sure in your essay, your application, that you answer the question, but also address why you want to pursue your graduate degree, why you want to pursue your education, your program, at the program you're applying to. So make sure that that's conveyed in your application. You want to set your goals, identify those. In the admissions committee, we're not guessing what you're trying to do. We are reading what you're submitting to us, and so we want to see very clearly that you know ahead of time what you're interested in doing. We're also very interested in what you're passionate about. So make sure that resonates in your application, your essay. This is the one opportunity to really talk about who you are, what you want to do, and why you should be identified as a good student in our program. So make sure you identify all those questions and answer those questions. So as you're getting to the end of the application, as you're putting your materials together, and it's coming close to the deadline, because deadlines do come and approach very quickly before you know it's here. You want to finalize all your application materials for your admissions, proofread your application. It's never too many times to read it over and make sure that you've submitted all the documents that we're asking and that everything looks right. Finalize your application for scholarships and financial aid. Money is a big concern for a lot of our students, so you want to make sure that you've identified as many resources as possible to help fund and finance your education, because you can't just solely rely on the institution that you're applying to, because sometimes it's a great institution, a great fit, and they can offer you a little bit amount of financial packaging, and so you might need to find out other resources to kind of supplement that financial burden. So again, make sure that you update your financial plan, know ahead of time how much financial resources you have, how much money you're going to get from the university, and how many opportunities there are for external scholarships that you can tap into. Also, if you're working, sometimes there are employer benefits, so look into that as well. It's never a bad thing to ask if you don't know whether or not there is some employee benefits, tuition benefits. There are some employees that will say, we will give you X amount of money towards your education for your master's degree, but you have to come back to us. So sometimes it's great, you get money and you get a job at the end. So there's two benefits there, but you should ask. Sometimes it's much more than you actually expect. Check in with your recommendation letters, references. Sometimes you will send in a request early on in the application cycle and forget about it, hoping that your recommender will just do what you're asked them to do by submitting a recommendation on your behalf, and not realizing they haven't touched it or they haven't done it, and now the application deadline's coming up. So you want to make sure you check in with your recommendations to see that they've submitted their reference for you on your behalf. And if they haven't, just check in to make sure everything's okay. If you have to switch recommendations because they're very tapped for their time and they're traveling and they can't get to it, you want to make sure you identify enough time so that you can find someone else to write you a reference letter. So submit all the requested materials that we ask for, and definitely stay engaged with the school. It's not the end once you submit your application, but it's also important for you to stay engaged with the university that you want to apply to, find out what else is going on. If there are events that you can participate in, definitely do that. We all send information and communication to all our prospects and our students and applicants on what's happening on our campus, and if there's an interesting topic, a research topic that you might be interested in, follow up on it. It's definitely something to note. And again, Dan had mentioned AppSIAorg, great resource in terms of providing other events that are happening in the international affairs realm. So some common application mistakes, failing to follow instructions. You don't realize how many people actually don't follow instructions. Don't submit additional documents that we don't ask for. Just submit what we're asking for. You may feel like there's an urge that I want to submit another writing sample in addition to the essays and the personal statement that the school is asking for. Don't do it. Either they're not going to read it or they're going to pin you as you're not following directions. We didn't ask for it, don't submit it. Make sure when you're asking for transcripts or documents, ask for an extra copy. Sometimes they get lost in the mail. You want to be able to quickly turn that around if the transcript didn't make it into your application in time. So if you have an additional copy, you can actually submit that for review purposes. As well as recommendation letters. Make sure that you, again, talk to your references, get them on board, submit it to the right school. If you're applying to many schools, sometimes they get mixed up in terms of where they're submitting your reference to what school, so make sure that they're on track as well. Simple mistakes, again, answering the wrong question, not answering the question. Ask your friends, your peers, to review the essays once you've written them. Like Dan had mentioned, you get very vested in the application that you're submitting and you feel like it's perfect, but you've put in too much time into it. You've seen it too much. You've overlooked mistakes that others, a third party, if they're reviewing it or just doing a quick read, will quickly identify. So you just have them look through it very quickly. And then, as I mentioned earlier, make sure the school you're applying to is the application you're submitting. The essays are identified to the right school. This is the time also to do a self-assessment in terms of what it is that you want to do, what do you hope to accomplish outside of the program once you're finished with the program. So we're also trying to figure out whether or not you're a right fit for us. We want to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. 2 years is a big investment, so we want to make sure that this is going to be a very good value on your investment. So if you feel like there's some issues in your application that might come up, whether or not it's a poor GPA because you, for a semester in your undergraduate, something happened and your grades weren't as strong as they could have been, address it. Don't hide behind your weaknesses or poor grades. You want to talk about them. Get that out of the way, because the admissions committee is going to see it. They're going to find that, what happened in between this year and last year? Why was the applicant not working or wasn't in school? We're going to ask questions as to what the gaps are. So you want to make sure you address those gaps in the optional essay. That's your opportunity to talk through any weaknesses that you feel may not make your application as strong. We want to see that you've identified it, you're aware of it, and that you have grown since that point. So it's not going to penalize you. We understand people change, circumstances have happened, and you may be a different person now. So you want to make sure that you address all those concerns. Don't leave it to the admissions committee to guess for you, because it's never a good thing. We have very interesting creative stories for you. So what do schools look for? We are looking at your academic preparedness. Are you going to do well in our institution? So it's not beneficial for us to admit a student that's not going to do well, simply because then you're going to suffer through the 2 years or the year that you're with us. We want to make sure that you're going to be able to hit the ground running. There's lots of resources at each of our schools to make sure that you're a successful student, but at the onset, we want to make sure that you'll do well in our program, or you have the potential to do well. The other is your professional opportunity, your professional progression. We want to make sure that you've had some experiences and that you will be able to take the degree that you have gained or earned at our institution to do even more beyond our schools. And then the third is really the fit. Is this a right place for you? A lot of students want to go to grad school, but there are a lot of grad schools and a lot of different programs. So you want to make sure that the program that you're applying to is the right fit for you in terms of what you want to do in your career, and it's going to provide you with those skill sets and those resources. So now I'm going to turn it over to Angie, who will talk about financial resources. Oh, hold on. Sorry.
A little bit lower. Now that I am all set up. Hi, I'm Angela Ratliff, and I'm with the Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton University. And I'm going to be talking to you a bit about financial resources, and I hope I have this going the right way. Yeah, paying for school. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, paying for school. Now, with the 5 universities that travel together here, G5, we all have a bit different funding options that are available. And the institutional funding and resources all can be found on each of our websites. Each one has a specifically different way that they handle financial aid. We at Princeton have one particular way we're able to fund our students through merit-based tuition aid, but most of the schools have some form of merit-based or need-based tuition aid to help you out. So you can find those at the universities themselves when you are looking at the schools. And be sure to contact those schools if you have any questions about what those levels are, how those levels are decided, if they can be talked about before application or if they're talked about after admission. The academic or the need-based awards are all scaled by what you're putting in on your application. And some of those merit-based awards are available right as you're an applicant and an admitted student, or they're available in the second year. So that's one thing to keep in mind too, that you may not get a certain amount of funding in your first year, but the hard work and dedication that you put into your programs, if you choose one, can pay off in a merit-based award. Some other areas that you can look into are research and teaching assistant positions. Some of those positions can be considered work study, or others are grants and programs that specific faculty on campus have. The funding might come from private or governmental organizations, and they are looking for additional student help. A lot of those can be found also in programs or centers on the university's website, or they can be found through the admission or the financial aid offices of each of the universities. So definitely go into a deep dive into these websites for all of the schools, because you want to find out as much as you can, and the amount of research that you put in will help you in the end. Now, the assistance provided by Central University programs within the school, that is a lot of funding either given by alumni or other fellowships that have been developed over years. And that assistant is divvied up between the program that you are admitted into and sometimes even specific qualifications. Like we have some fellowships within Princeton that are for journalists specifically who are coming to us. We have a multitude that are specifically for international students. So be aware of those, that sometimes those assistants provided are for very specific things within the programs that you're looking for. Now, external funding, that's where things get a bit crazy, and you really want to look at those as much as you can. And be a little careful here, because I was doing a little research on this talk, so I did some Google searches, and I found a lot of information about people who want to charge me extraordinary interest rates for a student loan. So definitely take those sites with a grain of salt when you're looking at loans, and make sure that they are qualified lenders who have a decent rate with those loans. Some of the universities themselves provide self-loans, so they will loan you the money instead of you having to use outside financial institutions. And those are wonderful if the school that you have been admitted to has those available to you. Definitely seek those out. I know with our university, with Woodrow Wilson School, we have those available if there's an extraordinary need above what we are able to give. Not many students need to do that, because we will fund as best we can possibly do, and all the other schools do have those available. Grants can be given for specific reasons too, so definitely speak with your school that you're applying to talk about those type of things. Their financial aid offices are going to be more than willing to speak with you about grants, and those can be based with work. You may have some that you're bringing from the outside. There may be some available from internal funding too. But if it's an outside grant, as Grace was speaking earlier, you can ask your workplace. They may have grants that are available. You can go back to your undergraduate institution. Sometimes they might have some money that can follow. Grants are also given from different institutions, either internationally or nationally. And a great place to look for grants and scholarships themselves externally is AppSIA.org. That website has so much information. I think each one of us has spoken about AppSIA, but again, that is a great resource when you're looking for a graduate school. So you're going to want to go there as much as you will our specific institutions because they have so much information. Now, loan forgiveness and workforce shortage programs, if you can get into those are great. Loan forgiveness programs are, if you can find one, certainly. A lot of times those and the work shortage programs have criteria that you have to meet. Either you will come and be working at a place and they will give you money to go get your graduate degree, or with the loan forgiveness, you may be able to come to them after you've completed your graduate degree, and they would provide you help with paying for that after the fact. So definitely look into those, especially when you are doing work after your undergraduate, because most of us do like to see a few years of work experience. That may be something you want to ask, even after you've gotten the job. Hey, do you provide this? Many places do not, but if they do, take full advantage of it as best you can. And then that goes back to employer benefits. When you are working at a school, even if they are not, or when you're working at a school, when you're working after you've graduated from school, the first thing on your mind isn't how do I get into grad school and how do I pay for it, but definitely have a conversation with your employer, because even if they don't put you in a workforce shortage type of program, they may have some kind of educational benefit to them. It behooves them to provide funding for you because they know the other side, the student that goes in will be the worker that comes out that's going to have a much greater expanded educational aptitude that can only benefit their workplace. So certainly, even if it's a small amount of funding, take opportunity with that. Now, return on investment. So you've found your school. You've thoroughly worked on your application. You found your funding and you've been admitted. What happens then after you've completed this? That's a lot of what applicants ask and admitted students ask. What am I going to do with this degree after I get out? And the career options can actually be pretty endless. The international affairs field, as they say, is an interdisciplinary field that can prepare you for a variety of career paths. Take that truly to heart. Interdisciplinary field. That means that you're going to have a breadth of knowledge that you can tap into when you walk out with your degree. You can go so many places. If you can dream it, you can go there. I know that people do go into communications and public relations, but they also go into speech writing. They also go into the public sector or the private sector where they can work and take their degree and do good for the world. Development and conflict resolution can be anywhere, not only on a global expanse, but it can be on a local expanse. It can be on a neighborhood expanse. Energy and environment, many of our programs do have focus. You can either focus on that entirely or with an additional certificate. And that field is always looking for qualified workforce. Education, you can't specifically go and teach, but you certainly could work in education policy, not only within your company, but globally. Human rights and law is another huge aspect of an area to work in. Science, technology, security, and intelligence. All of these fields have huge amounts of job opportunities. Excuse me. So one of the things that our degrees will give to you is it prepares our graduates to meet global challenges faced by many organizations. And you can see the breakdown of all of our schools when we think about where graduates have gone on. They've gone into the private sector, the public sector. As you can see, that's mainly where people go, is the public sector, and then followed by the private. But we also have nonprofit and multilateral. Nowadays, you can work for a private institution doing public works. You can work at a public sector job that deals with private sector companies. There's so many places to go. Don't feel that you are getting this degree and you have to go into a very specific slim area. There's multiple places that you can go. When I think about our graduates, we have them everywhere. We have them at the IMF, especially with, as you can see the breakdown here, with the multilateral sector, the UN, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the European Commission. Private sector could be in consulting, banking, business, or finance. In the public sector, when we say government, we don't just mean at a national level. It can be at the lowest local level, but it's giving you all the skills you need to be the best wherever you choose to lead from. Now, defense and intelligence can, that actually can be an area that is untapped for many of our students, because from the Woodrow Wilson School, we focus mainly on putting people into the public sector. But those private sector jobs too, as I was speaking earlier about the private sector, they have a lot of crossover between public and private sector. So those are great areas for jobs. Now with that, what you want to do to put yourself out there once you've got this degree is to be competitive. Your international professional experience is going to work well for you when you go out into the workforce. You've brought it with you when you went into graduate school because you've been working, maybe a couple years to even get into the graduate school of your choice. Now that you have this experience behind you, many of the schools require an internship, so you're going to use that as internship when you go out into the workforce and really hone in on that professional experience when you're going out and looking in jobs, because many of these areas that the jobs are available in will be places that want to know, oh, this person has worked overseas, this person knows multitude of languages, this person has already had some experience in specific sectors. You want to write well, and this is so important, and this goes back to that interdisciplinary education that you'll receive as in the graduate schools, because writing clearly and precisely and being able to get your point across in the most concise way is the most important thing that you will learn, I feel. Because many people have great ideas, but if you can't express them and have those ideas understood by your audience, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to understand what you want to do with that. And you want to speak confidently. That is a difficult thing for anyone. It can be very difficult for people who are coming into a different country to learn. And they may feel that maybe because the courses are taught in English, it's not comfortable for them to speak, or you don't like to be in front of crowds. But when you go and you can speak as confidently as possible, because you've been given a skill set through your graduate experience, you're going to present yourself very well. So go out there and just, guns blazing. Understand project management. Now, this is something that is very, very important, because you want to understand how you're going to get things done. And you're going to also need to understand all the people that are involved. So project management, if you don't know what it is, start to learn about it, and certainly get into programs within graduate schools once you're admitted that are going to help you polish those skills, because you're going to be working in graduate school on projects. And the more project management skills you have, the more you're going to lend to an employer at the end and build a network. A lot of that's going to be hardwired in if you're admitted to one of these programs, because you're going to have your cohort. You're going to meet alumni. You're going to have faculty and lecturers that you've learned from. You're going to be able to tap into those resources and use them to help you get the job that you want to get. That network is very, very vital. And don't be shy about reaching out to an alumni or reaching out to someone that you've met through your educational experience in graduate school, because a lot of people are there to help you succeed. I know with all of our programs, if you're admitted to the program, that's because we believe you will succeed. And building a network is one way that you can ensure the foundation of your success. So certainly send an email to an alumni who maybe is from the same area that you are, or is studying something that you have, or you heard talk at some alumni panel on campus. That network is incredibly important and will help you along your way. So All right, now we're going to open it up to a bit of questions, if anybody has any. So we can certainly speak more about getting a job after graduation or funding or any of the different sections that we had in the presentation. Or if you have specific questions for any of us on our specific programs, please feel free to ask that, and we can always hand off the mic. So, oh, sorry, yes.
Are there any advantages in completing application for an early admission?
That I may have to lead off. I know with Princeton, with Woodrow Wilson School, we don't have early application. I can't speak to my colleagues, but certainly if...
So, SEPA has an early November 1. Sorry, it's November... just all these... Okay. So it's November 1. And the advantage is that if you submit a completed application by that deadline, you'll receive a decision before the new year. So for candidates who want a decision early for scholarship applications, because there are some scholarships that require you to receive admission before they consider you for a scholarship, that will give you that opportunity to get that in earlier and get a decision earlier. We also at SEPA will consider you twice for financing options. So during the first take, the November 1, you will be considered with that pool of candidates for some scholarship opportunities. And if you don't receive any scholarship at that point, you will then be rolled over and be considered with the larger scholarship funds.
And chances of getting in your group or not?
It's about the same. We have so not as many applicants are ready to submit by November 1 because it's coming up very quickly, right? So you really have a lot of much more. You get candidates that have thought about this much longer, who are very proactive in terms of getting their application and have an incentive to get a decision earlier.
So we can turn that puppy off. So sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Put this back on. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. We took questions, and we're going to take questions here locally. And so thank you for being part of this virtual session. We appreciate it. Thank you.